Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a controversial and often overlooked aspect of Cold War geopolitics, the funding of African liberation movements. While these movements fought for independence and self-determination, the involvement of global powers often came with hidden agendas, political manipulation, and long-term consequences. In this episode, we'll explore how foreign funding shaped African liberation, the dirty tactics behind it, and the impact it left on the continent. Let's get started. The context of African liberation movements. During the mid-20th century, African nations began their struggle to break free from European colonial rule. Movements in countries like Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and South Africa fought for freedom, equality, and sovereignty. While their causes were just, these movements became pawns in the larger game between Cold War superpowers, the United States, the Soviet Union, and China. Both Western and Eastern blocs viewed Africa as a battleground for influence, often funding liberation groups not for the sake of justice, but to expand their political ideologies. This funding frequently came with strings attached, turning liberation struggles into proxy conflicts. The dirty tactics behind the funding. Arming rebel groups. Both the US and the USSR provided weapons, military training, and financial aid to rival factions. This led to prolonged conflicts and civil wars that destabilized entire regions. In countries like Angola, the Soviet Union backed the MPLA, while the US and South Africa supported UNITA. Creating dependency. By controlling the flow of money and arms, external powers ensured that liberation leaders remained dependent on their support. This often meant following political ideologies that did not align with the local population's needs, leading to internal divisions and corruption. Political manipulation. Funding was often selective, backing leaders who aligned with the foreign sponsor's agenda. This manipulation resulted in internal power struggles, coups, and assassinations, weakening the movements from within. Exploiting natural resources. In exchange for funding, foreign powers negotiated access to valuable resources such as oil, diamonds, and minerals. This not only exploited Africa's wealth, but also perpetuated economic inequality long after liberation was achieved. Why it was dirty. While liberation movements aimed to end colonial oppression, the involvement of global superpowers blurred the lines between ally and exploiter. Many African nations found themselves free from colonial rule, but burdened by debt, conflict, and continued external influence. In some cases, rival factions backed by opposing global powers plunged countries into decades of civil war. This led to mass displacement, economic collapse, and humanitarian crises that still affect the continent today. Examples of foreign funding and its consequences. Angola, 1975-2002. The US and South Africa funded UNITA rebels, while the Soviet Union backed the MPLA, resulting in a 27-year civil war. Mozambique. The Soviet Union supported Frelimo, while the West covertly funded Renamo, leading to devastating conflict. South Africa. While nations like Cuba supported the ANC against apartheid, Western powers were hesitant, prolonging racial oppression and violence. The long-term impact. The funding of African liberation movements shaped the political landscape of the continent, but at a heavy cost. Many nations achieved independence only to face internal strife, corruption, and economic challenges driven by Cold War interference. Furthermore, the legacy of militarized politics continues to haunt many African nations, where former rebel leaders became authoritarian rulers, often prioritizing personal gain over national progress. The funding of African liberation movements is a reminder of how global politics can manipulate noble causes for strategic gain. While these movements played a critical role in ending colonial rule, the involvement of foreign powers left behind a legacy of conflict, division, and dependency. If you found this deep dive insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content. Let us know in the comments if there are other hidden stories you'd like us to explore. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.